Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the Edinburgh International Book Festival. My name's Kenny Farquharson. I'm a journalist with The Times in Scotland, and it's my great pleasure to be able to welcome you to the New York Times Theatre in an event sponsored by the insurance company Blackford. A little bit of housekeeping, first of all. A full 20 minutes of this hour we have together tonight is going to be devoted to you, asking your questions of our guests this evening. So there'll also be an opportunity to have books signed in the cafe tent, which I think is that way?
Yeah.
That way? I'm being told that's correct. And so to tonight's author. He's one of Scotland's leading men of letters, a crime writer who defies lazy expectations of genre fiction. I'm building it up. A cultural commentator celebrated for his acuity and his judgment. He's a man who likes a good beer, who likes good music, and who likes good company. And we're very fortunate to have his company here tonight. So can I ask you to give a very warm book festival welcome to Ian Rankin.
Thank you.
Still music.
We're in a band together. Kenny plays drums in our band, Best Picture. And so we're attuned to music. We're attuned, especially because we played our first gig in a year last week in Glasgow.
Yes.
Our first ever Glasgow gig.
Set the scene for us, Ian. It was a Wednesday night in a damp, sweaty...
A wet Wednesday night in Glasgow, and we were supporting Fat Cops. That's a band. And and their drummer is Al Murray, the comedian, and he basically stole half our band last year to be in his band. So he took our keyboard player, and he's also borrowed both our guitarists, and they went and made an album together, which is why we've not played together in almost a year. So last week was a bit of a trial by fire, because we'd had one practice, and we were great.
We were great.
We were great. I mean, it's no room for false modesty in Scotland. We were, we blew them off the stage, Kenny. I think Fat Cops. They didn't
let's
know what
talk
to
about
do.
When you're standing in a damp, sweaty, hot basement in front of 200 damp, sweaty, hot, slightly drunk Glaswegians, and you're standing there and about to sing one of your songs. What does that feel like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of me switches off.
Yeah.
I think part of me switches off. I mean, I'm so focused on not forgetting the words, putting the right words in the right order, and not breaking the microphone stand and not punching air with that shoulder, because that's quite a sore shoulder. I can pogo for a maximum 30 seconds. All of that, and you're sort of scoping out the audience, going, are they into it? Or because we did a gig here last year, maybe some of you were at it, and we were preceded by, I think, some kind of earnest poetry, I'm not sure, and it was in the Spiegel tent, and we came on stage and did this kind of loud, raucous punk. Half the audience walked out, I would think, and I don't think we had many walkouts in Glasgow, so I'm a big fan of Glasgow audiences. Yeah. Well, we're going to do some tonight, but we're not going to do any for you tonight. Unplugged.
Yeah.
Best Picture Unplugged. We are, though, now that we're in the room, we can say this, we are selling our single at the end. So if you don't want a book signed, we do have 7-inch singles, pink vinyl, a £5 signed, and the money's going to charity. So we've got something. I don't know how many we've got. I think about 100. Anyway.
So how would you describe your band's music, Ian?
People say it's punk. I don't know. It's literate punk, maybe. I mean, I think the lyrics are fantastic. They're clever, they're funny, they're self-deprecating. The band are fine, they're all right. But no, I don't know what it is. What it is kind of 5 guys who should know better at this stage in their lives, trying to rediscover. I was here earlier watching David Nichols talking about his latest book, Sweet Sorrow, and he always writes about 16, 17-year-old guys who are just on the cusp of adulthood, who fall in love with women or young, beautiful women, and they feel really awkward and they can't do this and they can't do that. And that's what we're doing. We're going back to those days when we were 16 or 17 and we would love to be attractive to women, but we can't find a way to do that. So we join a bunch of greasy oiks in a band, which is why all guys join bands, is to try and attract women of a certain moral dubiety.
And one of the songs in your stroke our band, and goes back to when you were a kid in Fife.
Oh yeah, good segue, Kenny.
Slightly younger than 16.
Yeah. No, one of the songs is called 1972, and it's basically about me, aged 12, in this kind of working class mining town in Cardenden in Fife, Bow Hill, not even Cardenden. Villages. There were 4 villages, and they got amalgamated eventually to make this one entity called Cardenden, but I was in Bow Hill. And yeah, you know, the local cafe, Pyrex, coffee cups, Coke machine, you know, like a big kind of like a chest freezer that bottles of Coke would sort of slide out of. And just listening to T-Rex and dreaming of escape. I mean, using music and the music press as a way of escaping. I mean, the song goes, you know, reading Sounds full of dreams. You know, Sounds was the kind of music press at that. I bought Sounds, which is a music newspaper, because you got a free colour poster every week. In my tiny bedroom, I've got photos of me somewhere, photos of me in this tiny, tiny bedroom that was just covered in posters from Sounds. I had no idea who half these bands were. I thought Alice Cooper was a woman. She was rough.
But you're from Fife.
Says the Dundonian. Says the Dundonian.
If I didn't already have on my coat, I would have put it.
Yeah, really. Out. That's it. Square, go outside, buddy. But you know, it was like, you know, music was a way of escape. Radio 1 and listening to John Peel and stuff was a way of escape. Books eventually would become a way of escape.
Yeah, how would you compare the role literature's played in your life to the role music played in your life, and you know, emotionally, and what made you you?
Well, I mean, if you go back far enough, I wanted to be a pop star. I mean, when I was 12, 13, 14, that's what I wanted to be, was a pop star, but I had no musical ability or anybody who wanted to be in a band with me, so I wrote lyrics for a non-existent band called the Amoebas. And that was my first, that was my own, well, before that was, I tried to do strip cartoons. I tried to do cartoons, but I couldn't draw. And then pop music was next, and the lyrics for the Amoebas became my first stabs at poetry. And so by the time I was 17, 18, and I'd actually been accepted to go to Edinburgh University, I thought I was going to be a poet. I arrived at Edinburgh and joined the Poetry Society and got to meet poets. Norman McCaig, Eddie Morgan, you know, they were mostly blokes. And you got to read your poems out before they got up on stage. Well, not stage, it was just over at Hill Place. And you would get to read your poems out. I remember one time we set it all up. We thought, let's make it atmospheric. We'll turn all the lights off. We'll get some candles. We'll have lots of big mirrors everywhere. And it was, who was it? I forget who the poet was who arrived. And we said, how you doing? He went, oh, my mum's just died. Blow the candles out. Get the lights on. Get the lights on. Get the lights on. Yeah. It was kind of embarrassing, but we loved all that. And I got to stand up and read my poems out. And then the big thing afterwards, the big treat, was to take them back to Potter Row, to the student union, and buy them drink and say to them, where'd you get your ideas from? Basically, or who's your publisher? You know, and I was fairly venal even back then. Who's your publisher? And of course, very few of them had publishers. They were kind of self-published, their next best thing. But getting to hang out with writers, the first time I'd actually been able to hang out with writers, because Cardenden had no writers that I was aware of. There actually was one. There was a guy called Joe Corey in the 30s, I think, or 20s and 30s. He was a miner, but he was also a poet, a playwright. And he got the wives of the miners to perform his plays. But I didn't know at that stage, when I was 18, I didn't know of Joe Corey. That knowledge came later on. So I wasn't even the first bloody writer to come out of Cardenden.
So it must be 12 months since you've been in Charlotte Square. What have you been up to with your life in the past 12 months?
Well, I've not written anything. I mean, I feel like a complete charlatan sitting here. I finished In a House of Lies June last year. That's when it was edited and sent off to the publisher. And since then, I've written a couple of short stories and a couple of introductions to other people's books. And I've written nothing. I've been too busy downsizing, moving house. And life just got in the way. And also, I'm doing a book every 2 years. So actually all fit together. So I knew I didn't have to write a book this year. I've got to write a book by June next year. So that one I'll need to have started by January, because it takes about 6 months to write. But it's kind of interesting how busy you can be as a writer these days without actually writing anything. Right. So you go on tours and things, and you're on Twitter, and you're doing interviews, and you're having meetings about projects and TV and plays and stuff, but you're not actually physically writing anything. You're just being a writer.
You say you've downsized, you've moved house, and have you had to downsize your book collection and your record collection?
Everything. I had to downsize our cat collection. Because we moved to Quartermile, you're only allowed one pet. And we had 2 cats who were sisters. They were sisters from the same litter, and they were 12 years old. And we said, well, we can't split them up. So they went to Grandma's house, my wife's mother's house.
Is that a euphemism?
No, they really literally did. Oh, bless Grandma's house. No, I didn't chuck them in a fucking river. They went to stay in Belfast with my wife's mother. Thank God she did it. Otherwise, we would have had to, what do we do? So yeah, and big garden, all gone. And we had, I'm not a collector, but I'm a hoarder. I had sort of bags of receipts and bus tickets and all kinds of stuff going back 40 years. And we moved to a 3-bedroom flat with no storage space, so all that stuff was going to have to go. Now, thankfully, the National Library of Scotland came in and said, we would love your archive. So then, not the bus tickets, but they took the manuscripts, the rejection letters, correspondence, all kinds of stuff. So for about 9 months, I sat in the garage of our old house with just box after box. And every time I thought I've got to the end, oh, another box, so here we go. Oh, Christ, there's more stuff here. Going through it all, a lot of it got shredded. Some of it, the teenage diaries I've kept. Nobody's getting them. The manuscripts and stuff, the projects, the unfinished projects, all went to the National Library of Scotland. And there's a ton of stuff there. There's novels that I've never seen the light of day. There's TV and film projects that I've never seen the light of day. Short stories I don't remember writing. Correspondence with me and my editor, my agent, about projects that never got off the ground that I don't remember. A bunch of letters, because I left Edinburgh in 1986. PhD money ran out in 86. Moved to London, moved to France. I spent 10 years away, pre-internet, and a lot of it was correspondence. And so there's letters from P.D. James, Ruth Rendell, Reg Hill, Colin Dexter, Willie McIlvany, Ian Banks. Most of them now dead.
But when you first started collecting all this stuff, you got your natural hoarder.
Yeah.
Did you think of it as, this is my archive, or is it just 2,000 boxes of books of stuff?
I think I did from an early age. I think I had a pretty good conceit of myself, Kenny. I think I thought from a very early age, you want to keep this stuff for the nation. Reviews and adverts and stuff. I kept everything. But I did keep everything. I mean, I was a hoarder from a young age. Chewing gum cards, Corgi and Dinky toys, comics. I kept a lot. And then come the evil hour, no storage space. A lot of it's got to go. So the dump, a lot of stuff went to the dump. I was on first name terms with the folk at the dump. Charity shops of Edinburgh, I've never seen so much stuff in their life. And then, of course, the archive, the National Library of Scotland took about 25 big boxes of manuscripts, which proved to be a double-edged sword, because somewhere along the line after this had all happened, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but there's a book of mine called West Wind, which was published in 1990, and I've never allowed to be reissued because I thought it wasn't very good. I'd been edited, re-edited, edited again. I fell out of love with it somewhere along that line. And so it was one hardback, one paperback, only in the UK, never reissued. And then someone on Twitter said, I've just read that, it's quite good. And I went, really? So I got the copy off the shelf and I read it and I thought, yeah, it's actually not bad. There's some interesting prescient stuff about the relationship between America, the UK and Europe. This was written in 1988-89. America is retrenching, moving its troops out of Europe. Russia is rubbing its hands. Actually, not Russia, the USSR is rubbing its hands. We're all being spied on by satellites. There's no privacy. This was a kind of alternate reality of early, 1989, 1990. Anyway, said to my publisher, I said, well, I've not got a book this year. What do you think? Could we maybe... So they said, well, send us a copy. So I sent them a copy of it. And then I thought I should get the manuscript out. Oh, I've not got the manuscript. The manuscript is in the bowels of the National Library of Scotland, and all the correspondence to do with it is in the bowels of the National Library of Scotland. But anyway, we've re-edited it, we've kind of tweaked it. We've not changed, we've not brought it up to date. So it is still very much of that period. Okay. But some of the clunkier writing I've polished a wee bit. And it's going to be reissued in time for Christmas.
Right. And does it reflect the technology of the time?
Oh my God. Obviously I was obsessed with central locking in cars. Not remote central locking, no. That was in the future. That was something that was only in Doctor Who. No, turn the key in the lock, all the locks drop. I mentioned it 9 times. Modem, someone explains what a modem is. Nobody has mobile phones. I mean, and I remember the research for the book. I thought, I want to write, the reason I want to write a techno thriller is that is what seemed to sell in airports. And I wanted to write something that was going to make me some money. But I knew nothing about technology. So I went to Tottenham Library. We were living in Tottenham at that stage. And I said to the librarian, you got any books on satellites? Oh, we can get you some, thanks. And space shuttles as well. Yeah, no problem. Eventually these books arrive, which are basically geometry. It's like, this is all Greek to me, buddy. I can make no sense of this at all. All right, we'll keep trying. And eventually got me a book, an Usborne book, my big book of satellites. A children's cutaway book, which I just thought, this is absolutely brilliant. This is everything I need. It explains how a satellite works, the innards of a satellite, how you launch them, how long they can stay up. Brilliant. I do remember that the book, when it was released, didn't get many reviews, but one of them in one of the broadsheets said, technologically exacting look at space. I went, yay!
So, in a sliding doors kind of way, there could have been a sci-fi writer sitting here rather than a crime writer. Could that have happened?
Do you think? I don't know, because it's a weird one, because at the same time as I was writing Westwind, I was also writing the second Rebus novel.
Okay.
The Westwind took about 3 years to write and get published, and in the middle of it, I started writing a Rebus book. So Westwind was getting pushed to one side because I was getting much more interested in going back to Edinburgh again.
What could you do with a crime novel you couldn't do with a sci-fi novel?
I don't know. I mean, Philip Kerr wrote a great crime novel set in the future, a philosophical investigation, and Paul Johnson has written crime novel set in an Edinburgh of the future. I don't know. I wasn't a big sci-fi fan. And it wasn't sci-fi, it was just it was set in the present day when I was writing it. I just kind of tweaked the present day slightly, an alternate reality. It's very much of its period. People smoking in airplanes and stuff like that. Phone boxes, oh yeah, all that stuff.
When you look back at the Ian Rankin who was writing in 1989 there, what do you see? If he was standing lurking in that corner there, how would you describe him?
Just venal. And just having just desperate to make a go of it, desperate. I've got all my diaries. I used to keep a page a day diary. I've got my diaries from that period. I was struggling. I was in a succession of fairly dead-end jobs that I wasn't really enjoying. Living in London, in Tottenham, 3-hour-a-day commute, 90-minute each way commute within London, 5 days a week, knackered at the weekend. And just not feeling like a success, surrounded by more successful authors. We'd moved to London. I was surrounded by publishers and agents. I was going to a few parties. I was reviewing books for a very young newspaper called Scotland on Sunday. They were sending me books, so I was on the tube to work. I'd be reading these books and then typing up my reviews when I got back to the flat, faxing them to Scotland on Sunday. I think Trevor Royal, who I bumped into earlier today, was the literary editor at that time. There were a lot of people giving me chances, but I went to the Bill. I said to the Bill, please give me a writing job on the Bill, and so I was trying to write for TV shows. I would go through the London phone directory, looking for famous names that I could send my books to.
Really?
Bragg M, an address in NW3, that might be Melvin Bragg. I will send a book to M. Bragg in NW3 just on the off chance it's Melvin.
That's brilliant.
You know, of course I never got anything back.
Yeah.
I'd see, you know, who's got a book launch at Hatchards or Foyles. Oh, Martin Amos has got a book. I'll go along and see if I can schmooze Martin Amos. I mean, none of this stuff was working. I was a dodgy sounding working class Scot on the make. And you know, and my wife was very supportive. She was hugely supportive, but I was so naive, so gauche, and just scrabbling around trying to find out what kind of writer I wanted to be. David Nichols was on this very stage earlier today, and he was saying much the same. You know, he was a failed actor. He wasn't sure he could write. He got into script editing and editing, and he was trying to write stuff, and it wasn't quite working. He was trying to find his voice, trying to find himself, trying to find who he was. And Rebus came along, and within about 4 or 5 books, I thought, no, this is my voice. This guy is my spokesperson, and Edinburgh is what I want to write about.
Yeah. So where the next book, the next Rebus book you do, when will you start writing that? You kind of.
Is there any wood here? I mean, could be September.
Yeah.
I've got nothing at the moment.
Damn.
I know.
I ask you what you had.
I'm trying to find a title. I keep bouncing titles around with people, and we've not quite found it. I need to get a working title before I can start writing, which is the kind of theme of the book is contained in the title, and I'm bouncing stuff around, and nothing's quite worked yet. I've signed up to do a play. There was a Rebus play last year, which was a big hit insofar as a lot of people drank. Theatres don't want plays. What theatres want is bar takings. And they'd never seen bar takings like the takings for this Rebus play. All around the UK. Did its first run, and when other theatres saw what the first run's bar takings were, they said, can we get it? We ended up using 2 actors, because the first actor, his run finished. We brought in another actor because they got another run. So they've said, can you do please do another Rebus play. So, and it's got to have an interval. It's got
2 intervals.
Any subject you want, mate, but just make sure it's got an interval so we can sell those drinks. So I'm working on that. Well, I'm not working on that, but I've met the playwright I'm going to work with, and we're going to bounce ideas around. So come September, I've got 2 things to do, both of which will be done by next June.
So what do you, for the plays, what do you feel the stage can do that the page can't and the TV productions can't?
It's a good question. It's a good question. It's structure. It stretches you as a writer. I mean, it's certain there are things you cannot do on stage and things you can do on stage that you cannot do in the book. Playwrights often have the actors address the audience. I mean, Rebus doesn't do that in the books. That'd be really awkward in the book. Suddenly have Rebus address the audience. Even in a first-person narration, they don't really address the audience. So you can have dream sequences, you can have all kinds of stuff. What I wanted and what I got in the first Rebus play was Rebus and Cafferty on stage together. These 2 huge male egos battling each other. These, prize fighters from a different age who are at the end of their careers. And the visceral relationship, I was never going to get that watching it on a screen. Screen distances you from the action. I walked to be in a room. And I remember going to see it. The opening night was Birmingham, because it was a Birmingham Rep co-production, and I went down. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't been to any of the rehearsals. I'd been away on tour. I hadn't met the actors. Went down that first night. And when Cafferty walked onto the stage with Rebus, I just thought, wow. The hairs went up on my arm. Partly because John Stahl, the actor who played Cafferty, just stole the show in a way. He was phenomenal. And then it came up to Edinburgh, and my wife came with me to open the night, and when Cafferty walked on the stage, she actually gripped my arm, because he's that incredible mix of menace and charm. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to actually see these guys in the flesh, sort of squaring up to each other and sort of dancing around each other. And I got that. And so that's what I got. There are things you can't do. I mean, there's all these things like you've only got so many entrances and exits, so many scene changes, time has to be quite contained in a play. But all of that makes you work harder to make the dialogue do the work. And I loved working with Rona Munro in the first play. Rona Munro's a phenomenal playwright, did the James plays. She's done all kinds of great stuff. And working with her, sitting talking to her about the process and stagecraft was opened my eyes. So as a writer, you want to keep learning, right? You want to keep stretching yourself if you possibly can. It's very easy when you've got a series. It could be easy when you're writing a series. I kind of know what the audience want. I kind of know what the publisher wants. I could get lazy. And the one thing that Rebus doesn't allow me to do is be lazy, because he keeps changing.
Yeah.
He ages in real time. He's got health issues now that he didn't have 10 or 20 years ago. He can't use his physical heft the way he used to. He can't chase suspects the way he used to. He's no longer a cop. He can't climb stairs. So that in all kinds of ways,
Like a Dalek.
he keeps me on my no, Daleks can't. Daleks can levitate now. It's phenomenal. When they brought Doctor Who back, whoa, that's how they get upstairs. They can levitate. There's nothing Daleks can't do.
On that
But no, a guy who I know who's got COPD, emphysema, which is what Rebus has got. You know, he said to me, Rebus, does he still live 2 flights up in that tenement in Harton Street? I went, yeah. He said, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
He's going to be buying a ground floor apartment or a bungalow.
Oh.
In Blackhall. A bungalow in Blackhall. No.
On that
You know,
subject,
Blackhall's
I
got
do.
the biggest, what's it, the richest people in
capita.
Scotland or richest people in Edinburgh live in Blackhall.
But they're in bungalows.
But if you're rich, don't buy a bungalow.
Buy 2 bungalows, put one on top of the other.
At least extend.
Yeah.
That's
On-
why they're rich, are living in bungalows.
On that subject, a ticklish subject.
On that subject, what subject of Blackhall or bungalows?
No, a subject of, you're 59 years old, Ian Rankin.
Yeah, 59 and a half.
Next year, in April, big 6-0.
Yeah.
Does that hold any fear for you?
I just hope I'm still around to enjoy it. I hope I'm still around. I mean, my mum died when she was 58, 59. Dad died when he was 72, so the clock is definitely ticking. The genes are not the genes of longevity. But no, I mean, I want to do something. I do want to do something for the big 6-0. I just don't, apart from getting my bus pass.
What did you do when you were 50? What did you do when you were 50?
It was so long ago. I can't remember what I was doing last. I don't know if I'm in Bombay or Weemsby. I don't know. I don't know what I was doing last week. What was it? 50. My wife will remember. She's got a great memory for that. I don't know. I think 45. I think I did a big one for 45 RPM.
All right.
I said the next one's going to be 78. 33, 45, 78. Come on.
Yeah.
But actually, 60 almost chimes with the Cromarty Crime Festival. That's around about my birthday every year, so I'll be in Cromarty just after that. So I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe the band should play a gig.
Definitely. But
And then we can all jump on the bus and go home for free.
It is one of these moments, though, I think, 60, is it when you
You're young.
I'm
You've got
2
years
years
to go.
younger than you.
You've got years to go. In Dundonian years, that's like you're a bairn. You're a bairn.
It's like they say in the Lion King, we're from the shallow end of the gene pool. But you know, there's a moment you come where you do an assessment. You know, you look back and you think, well, what have I done? I'm happy with what I've done. What am I going to do next? Do you have those moments?
I've been doing that since I was about 15.
Right.
Oh, honestly, I mean, when I look back at my diaries from my teenage years ago, you've been, ever since you were young, you've been looking back. God, my best years are way behind me now. 1972, that was my that was me. That was the apogee of my experience. Because your whole life's ahead of you. Anything is possible. And one of the nice things, I mean, I've said it before, but one of the nice things about punk when it came along was that punk said anything is possible. You don't have to go into a private school. You don't have to have banks of synthesizers to be in a band. You don't have to have contacts. You don't have to have grown up in a literary establishment or a literary household. If you want to try something, try it. And there's no shame in failing. I arrived at Edinburgh Uni, and a mate of mine from school days said, do you want to join a band? Yeah, why not? And a mate says, do you want to be in a play? Yeah, why not? Do you want to start a literary magazine? Might as well. Because punk said, do it.
You mentioned the diaries. Did you censor anything that was going in the archive? Did you take a look at something?
The diaries didn't go in the archive.
No.
The archives are going in my coffin. Actually, I did a show, was it last year before? It's probably still in the iPlayer somewhere of Radio 4, called My Teenage Diary. And they said to me, we believe you keep all your diaries. Do you want to do this program? I said, yeah, I'll do it. They said, well, just send us your diaries and we'll cherry pick. I went, no way. No. I will cherry pick. And it was a tough it was a tough evening because there was all kinds of stuff in there. It was my mum dying, or my mum getting ill and dying. She died when I was 19, so that was in there. Joining the Dancing Pigs, the punk band, was in there. I was such a weird kid. There's one entry that was something like, Uncle Sandy died today. My dad brought me his electric razor. The insurance man came.
That's a poem.
It was like everything had the same value to me. It was just a succession of things that were happening on any particular day. And I was obsessed with money. Went to Kirkcaldy, 49p on the bus. Bought the Skid single, 69 pence. Bought a sausage roll, 32 pence. I was just like, what? What was that all about? Everything had exactly the same value. It was whether somebody died or somebody came to visit. Malcolm came from next door to borrow my pencil sharpener. God, your uncle's just died. It was this weirdest thing to go back over this and see the kind of strange, screwed up kid. I mean, from a very, I would say a very well-balanced, happy background. But I was pretty screwed up from the word go.
Have you put a time lock on the archive, or is somebody going to be trawling through your life while you're still living it? I've paid for an archivist to be employed for the next year to go through it. So I wouldn't like anybody to see it until the archivist has been through it and put it in some kind of order. After that, it's open to the public, but only with my say-so. So I think I got a veto on who can go in there. Like journalists, Kenny, from the Times, won't be allowed in, obviously, for... and that's a broadsheet, by the way. The Sun will have to wait a lot longer than that to get access to it. Who's going to want to go and look at it? I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe PhD students of the future. I don't know. I think it's a useful thing in that, and again, I apologize, I've said this before a few times, but it is possibly I'm the last, my generation is the last generation of writers who will actually have an archive. There are fax sheets in there that are almost faded to nothing. Shiny fax paper, the ink fades away. There are computer disks from Amstrads that they think they can get, it might be corrupted. That might be corrupted, but we might be able to get stuff off it. We don't know until we try. The bus tickets will survive.
No, the bus tickets have gone, man. The bus that all got shredded. And all the bank statements and it all got shredded. But the rejection letters are there, the correspondence is there with editors, the kind of first drafts, the second drafts, there's a ton of stuff there. In a way that I don't know, the collected tweets of Irvin Welsh might be an archive of the future.
But your great literary hero was Muriel Spark.
Yeah.
And she gave her archive, and there was unexploded grenades in there.
Well, we don't know. We've not come across those yet. But there were bus tickets. I got to open one of the boxes. I opened one of the boxes, and I was going, here we go. It could be a manuscript, it could be anything. And it was like hospital appointments, and it was a bit annoying how ordinary it was.
She gave some of her dresses. Are you going to give some of your outfits to the National Library?
I've not thought about that yet, buddy. Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't think they wanted my outfits, to be honest with you, in the way they would have liked hers. But no, that was another thing about it was, because the university library would have been another possible place for the archive to go, but that is only accessible if you're a student. The thing with the National Library of Scotland is, although it used to be it was like Fort Knox. When I was a student, it was Fort Knox. You were not allowed in there until you were a postgraduate. Undergraduate students could not go into the National Library of Scotland. Then we had a postgraduate, you get the golden key to go in, like Gringotts, you get to go in. But now, if you're a member of the public, you can apply for a reader's ticket and go in. It's much more accessible than it used to be, which was a kind of factor in me deciding for the archive to go there. Another factor was, I'm sitting on a shelf beside Robert Louis Stevenson, Muriel Spark, Willie McIlvanney, Alistair Gray. Some of these were heroes of mine. Pretty much all of them were heroes of mine. Yeah. So it's lovely to actually be sitting on the shelf beside them. Willie McIlvanney's archive is not a huge archive as far as I'm aware. Mine is ridiculously big. There's a lot of shite in there. but that's for them to go through, not me.
Good. I think we're going to turn it over to the audience now. So we have people with microphones.
Ooh.
And if what we'll do is I'll ask you to put your hand up. If I point to you, wait till the microphone comes to you before speaking, because this has been recorded.
Is
and
it? No, it's not.
then give us your name, and then ask your question. So, who would like to ask a question?
No, nobody. Right. Signing in the Oxford Bar. Yeah, guy waving. Get that mic down there.
Chap over there. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi there, the name's Richard. You were mentioning archives. What do you see happening to archives in the digital age? Because people churn files out and throw them away, delete them, etc. What's going to happen for the future?
I think it's difficult. I think, everything these days is in the cloud. You have to believe in the cloud exists. You go, what the heck is the cloud? I don't believe in the cloud. I'm belt and braces. I print everything off. Every day I print off whatever I'm writing. I don't believe in the cloud. I don't think it exists. And if it does exist, it'd be very easy to corrupt or to get access to and to delete or to disable. No, I do think it's an issue, but archives, libraries all over the world are getting much better. They're getting very savvy. They're taking computer disks. They're taking, take your memory sticks. They'll take your memory sticks. They'll try and get stuff from there, and they'll record it. They'll copy it and record it and keep it. They are still maintaining that sense of what a writer's life is, or what all our lives are. I remember years ago reading a thing. What was it? It was an essay by I'm going to forget who it was by now. George Steiner, and he said for most people, the record of their existence when they die will be their name in the phone book. I go, we've not even got those now. Not even got those. We used to have the phone book, a physical record of where we lived, because we were all in the phone directory. There you go. You got a phone book. Really? Yellow pages? Huh? An actual physical phone book. God bless you. Have you noticed how thin they're getting? I mean, I hoarded, and one of the things I got rid of was all my phone directories.
Right.
And it was like the Edinburgh phone directory used to be that, and every year you could see it go dun 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 dun. So it was a really thin thing. The London one used to come in several volumes. I used to sit and go through it. Going, Ian McEwan in here. Honestly, I mean, I used to be a nut for that kind of stuff, for almost other writers' archives. Muriel Spark, when I was doing my PhD on Muriel Spark, there was no Muriel Spark archive, and there was very little information on her. She'd done a few interviews, and that was about it. She hadn't written her autobiography yet, and nobody'd written a biography of her. And I remember Alan Massey, who was the writer in residence at Edinburgh University, who had written a tiny wee book on Muriel Spark, the first book, I think, on Muriel Spark. And he gave me her address in Rome. And I thought, ooh, should I write to her? I never did. But that scrap of paper with her address in it is now in the archive of the National Library of Scotland, because my PhD thesis has gone in with all the bloody Rolodex cards. Because that's what, Rolodex cards. Oh, every time I found a review or an interview or anything in a newspaper or a magazine, I would do a wee Rolodex card filing system thing about Muriel Spark. And that's now gone into the National Library of Scotland. I did meet her once. I met her pretty much here. The year before she died, she came back to Edinburgh. Alan Taylor persuaded her to come back to Edinburgh to do an event in this very theatre, or a facsimile thereof, because this is now bigger than it used to be. And I remember Alan Taylor saying that she just wanted to read some poetry. He went, no, you've got to read from Brodie. You've got to kind of read from Jean Brodie in an Edinburgh audience. And I was sitting at the back going, yeah, she's reading from Jean Brodie. And then afterwards, there was a party for her. She was knackered. I had 2 big shopping bags full of first editions that I'd collected down the years. And she was tired and she wasn't very well. So I just plucked out Jean Brodie and said, will you sign that for me? That's not going in the archive.
No.
That's on my shelf at home. But it was a lovely kind of, the only time I ever met her. And then just last year, of course, was a centenary. And Alan Taylor and me, we made a documentary about her, which I think is going to be shown this year on Sky. Hopefully this year on Sky sometime. And we had a great time sort of retracing her life. People can't, you would be hard pressed to see the influence of her on my books, probably, I would have thought. But in some ways, it was a reaction to Brodie. It was that sense that nobody had dared write about Edinburgh, almost since the days of Miss Jean Brodie. Trainspotting came along fairly soon after the first or second Rebus novel. But when I was reading about Spark, nobody seemed to be writing about contemporary Edinburgh. And the problems that we had, the issues we had, the social problems. And Edinburgh seemed like this museum that people visited but didn't really get to know. And so crime fiction was a perfect way of letting me delve below the surface of Edinburgh.
Yeah. Good question, and it took us in all kinds of directions, which is what we like. Another question.
There's somebody over here.
All right,
Keep your
okay.
hand up, and we'll get a mic to you. Keep your hand up. Yeah, silver-haired guy. I know it's you. You're looking around going, it isn't me, is it? It is you. Keep your hand up. It's too late.
Thank you. My name's Andy. For many of us, Ken Stocks was the perfect Rebus. Did his acting and personality influence your view of Rebus in any way?
Thanks, Andy. You've not seen me talk before, have you? Because it's an old canard of mine. I've never watched an episode of Rebus. I've never watched an episode with John Hannah or Ken Stock because I didn't want actors to get inside my head and to change the way my character was inside my head. And I thought, before it was ever televised, way back in the day when John Hannah was talking about doing it, I phoned up people like Colin Dexter, who did Morse, and I said, should I get involved? And he went, well, get involved. It's good fun to get involved, but it will change the way you write about your character. The actor's interpretation will change the way you write it. And I thought, whoa, I don't want that. So I decided never to read a script or write a script or watch an episode. I've got all the DVDs and the videos, but I've never watched it. Fans, I know, were happy with Ken Stott. They were happier with Ken Stott than John Hannah. John Hannah seemed a wee bit young at the time and maybe a wee bit too good looking and soft and all the rest of it, whereas Ken looked like life had dealt him a few blows. I mean, I've told this story before, but Ken's a passionate, lifelong Hearts fan. So the TV version made him a Hibs fan, just to wind him up, just for a laugh, in the books, Rebus is neither Hibs nor Hearts. But I didn't like the way they did it on TV. I knew from people who watched it, my wife watched it and friends watched it, they're taking it down to 45 minutes per book, 45 minutes screen time per book. So all they did was keep the title but change the story because they couldn't contain a novel in 45 minutes. So I thought, no, that's not right. So I got the rights back, and we're now in the midst of a long battle to get it back on television. Gregory Burke, who's a fantastic playwright, has done a 2-hour pilot, an amazing 2-hour pilot, and the BBC have got it at the moment, and the BBC, being completely sclerotic when it comes to drama, have been sitting in it for months trying to decide if they want to do it or not. I mean, I want them to say no, so we can just jump straight to Netflix or Sky or somebody who will make a decision quickly, because they seem to be taking forever to make a decision. Who knows? I mean, I would love to see it back on television, long form. The 2-hour pilot is for basically an 8 or 10 hour film that would contain aspects of 2 or 3 books. And nobody's talked about casting yet. I've got no idea who would be cast. I always thought, when I was young, I always thought that Brian Cox, not the astrophysicist, but the Dundonian actor, would have made a pretty good Rebus. And on stage, Charles Lawson, who plays the first Rebus on stage, he's from Northern Ireland, but he did a pretty passable Scottish accent. And first time I met him, he said, Ian, I drank in the Oxford bar before you did. And it was true. It was true that in the 70s, he had a friend who was an architect who drank in the Oxford bar. And when Charlie Lawson visited Edinburgh, his friend would take him in.
Brilliant.
Way before my time. So it was meant to be. And then, the other actors have done it on radio, other actors have done Rebus, but there's no perfect Rebus in my mind yet. I don't know if you can ever do it. There are interpretations of a character who I still can't see. I physically can't see him. I can look out through his eyes and I can inhabit his body, but I never quite see him.
Your new house, I meant to ask this question, your new house, how many minutes walk closer to the Oxford bar is it?
10.
10?
Yeah. Merkison, half an hour, quarter mile, 20 minutes.
That's going to add so much to your life. All that time it's going to get.
Well, you know what? But it's less good for my health because I'm walking less than I used to. I used to walk an hour to and from the Oxford bar. Now it's 40 minutes. But I thought what you were going to ask me was, Ian, how come you're still living in Cafferty's apartment? Because Rebus lives in Arden Street, which is where I lived when I was an impoverished student, and I got the idea for the first book. And he's never moved. He's always lived in Arden Street. I then moved to this, eventually, when I made some money, moved to Merkison. And the street I lived in is where Cafferty ended up, the villain, the gangster who runs Edinburgh. So I was living in his house for a while, and then I moved him, I can't remember why, but I moved him to Quartermile, penthouse in Quartermile. And 3 months ago, hey, Ian moves to Quartermile. So I really want I don't want a Times journalist interview me, I want a psychoanalyst to explain to me why I'm much more attracted to the gangster, the villain, the Mr. Hyde, than I am to the good guy in my books.
Do you know what the flat you're in Quartermile, what it was when it was a hospital?
Yeah, it was obs-gynae. Yeah, obstetrics and gynecology. I said to my wife, I said, look, if people died there, I don't want to be there. She went, no, it was birth.
How many people in this room were born at Simpson Memorial?
Simpson Memorial. Hey, your mum would have gone to my flat for an examination.
If this has been recorded, cut that
I can't
out.
get that image out of my head
out.
now. That image in my head now. I wake up at night hearing trolleys.
Ah. Another question, please.
That's horrible. What a
let's see.
horrible image.
Is there
I apologise.
lady over there.
I apologise.
Hi there, my name is Svea. I've got a question about technology and if you see cybercrime or artificial intelligence coming into one of the new books and Rebus getting involved with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to slightly sidestep that, but I mean, of course, technology, if you're writing about cops, you do need to know a little bit about how technology has changed, not only in terms of how crimes are committed. Cybercrime is now a huge thing, and stalking and people being able to use the internet to spy on you and everything else, or to bully you. All that stuff is germane, but also the way the police operate. The stuff that's available to the police has changed a lot, and of course members of the public know this. They read the newspapers, they watch TV shows, they know that the technology is out there, but it's not always as available as you think. If you watch CSI or whatever, you get a very not a jaundiced view, but you get a skewed view of what's available to the police. You know, in the recent Rebus novels, I'm going to forget which one, but there's something where it has to go to Germany. Germany has the technology to do something like footprints or soil or something, or DNA. They've not got it in the UK. Have we got the time to do this? Have we got the money to do it? Because each case comes with a kind of a price list attached, and it doesn't always work out the way that it does on TV. And so I'm aware of that. At the same time, Rebus is not a technologically minded cop. He's a throwback. He's a last of his kind. He's a dinosaur, and so none of this means very much to him. And I always enjoy when when something like Twitter has to be explained to him. I mean, in the latest book, there's one of the subplots is to do with a teenage boy has killed his girlfriend, apparently. WhatsApp, messaging, all this kind of stuff, and Rebus has gone, what? Really? What is that? Why do people do that? I don't understand. And other people have to explain this to him because it means nothing to him. It's not his kind of policing. And it's a way of showing how the world is changing so rapidly, and for the police, the world is changing in extraordinary ways. I just finished watching, though, that series that was on BBC Scotland recently, Murder Squad or Murder Team. It was a 3-part series. And it was amazing how much CCTV was pertinent when it came to actually putting together a case. It's not very exciting to read about. It's not very exciting to read about people just sitting watching CCTV to solve a crime, but it is part of the landscape now of modern policing, along with DNA profiling and everything else. So I need to know a bit about that. So I do occasionally go to Gartcosh, the kind of crime campus, to talk to people. I do keep in touch with cops and pathologists and people that work at Howden Hall, the police lab in Edinburgh. But you know what? Most of them are now retired. Most of the people that I got to know have retired, which is great because they've got a certain freedom to tell me stories they couldn't tell me before. But at the same time, I'm not finding out the newest things in technology.
Good. Another question
We've got time for one or two more.
Yeah, chap right in the middle here. With,
All right,
with the
Mike's coming. Mike is coming. It's like pass the parcel. Oh.
Okay, I'm Eduardo from Infocip. Ian, Andrea Camilleri acknowledged your influence in developing his character, Montalbano. Are you aware of anybody else who was equally influenced?
Wow. Did he? I'm not sure Rebus really influenced Montalbano that much. I know he was a big fan of the books. He had a whole shelf of Rebus novels. I didn't know that until quite late on. There was a BBC Radio 4 interview with him, and it was Mark Lawson. And I know Mark Lawson, the interviewer, and he said, "Ian, I've just been to see Camilleri, and he's got like a row of your books in Italian sitting there on his shelf." And that was the first I heard of it. I don't think you can see much of Rebus in Montalbano. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, Rebus would not eat that lovely seafood linguine. Rebus tends not to eat food outdoors with a sea view in the same way, and he's not quite as kind of hunky and good-looking in Italian. I know, but have I influenced that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm part of I'm now the old guard. I'm now the old school. You know, there's a whole bunch of us from the 80s who are guests, you know, younger writers now say, "Oh yeah, I read you were the first crime writer I read," or whatever. Is that an influence? I don't know. I mean, you hope that. I mean, you know, people like me and Val McDermott, we wanted to be iconoclasts. Our mission was in part to destroy the reputations of the writers who come before us, to make a name for ourselves. So the writers who came before us had to be destroyed in a way, and now the younger writers have to destroy us to make their own reputation, to say we are the future, we are the voice you should be listening to. Don't listen to those old farts. So that goes on from generation to generation. But what crime writers do that's fun is they often mention each other in their books. So there's a Michael Connolly novel where apparently I'm on tour in the States, and there's a cutout of me wearing a kilt in a bookshop window, and that becomes germane to the story. I don't know. John Harvey, the Nottingham-based crime writer, has used me in one of his books, mentioned me in one of his books, and we often reciprocate. The next Rebus novel has to include Lee Child and Karen Slaughter, because they paid a lot of money to a charity auction to be in my next book.
Yeah, what cruel fate
what
do you have
What
for
do you
them?
do?
It's got to be something awful.
What do you do? I remember once doing an event in Canada with Michael Connolly and Peter Robinson, the English/Canadian crime writer. And we had to read a new short story out, and there was like 1,000 people in the audience, and Michael Connolly got up first. And he said, Bosch attempted to stop the gunman, but it was too late. The bullet pierced Rebus, and he killed him outright. I'm going, what? And he was up first about how to follow that, and he basically bumped off Peter Robinson's character and my character in the same short story. Never to be repeated. But you know what? It's an interesting community. I mean, the world community of crime writers is quite small, and we tend to go to the same festivals around the world. We meet each other. We reciprocate. There's a lot of cross-fertilization. What are you doing with your city that I'm not doing with my city? We've all learned that the crime novel is a great means to look at society, a culture, the history of that culture, what's happening now, the politics, the social issues, the economic climate, the problems they have with drugs and unemployment and people trafficking and xenophobia and everything else. And the crime novel starts out being quite localized. My crime novels are about Edinburgh. They're about Edinburgh. And after that, they're about Scotland. But then you start to realize they're part of a much bigger picture. The problems that we have in Scotland and the UK are problems that are being experienced elsewhere in the world. And so suddenly the crime novel becomes universal. And all these writers are trying to make something universal from the particular. And I love that. I love finding a new culture, India, wherever it happens to be, China. Is anybody writing crime fiction here? Hong Kong, who's writing crime fiction? Because that will tell me about that country, the history and everything else, in a very small package. And I love that, and I love the fact that all these different cultures have got their own way of using the crime novel to tell a story that's pertinent to the now, and hopefully will remain pertinent in the future.
Good. We've maybe got time for one more. Let me see. Lady in the front there, in the middle.
It's tough.
Hi. You just said about somebody killing off Rebus, in a short story. How do you think he's going to finish up? Is he going to go out with a bang or a whimper?
I have a hangover.
You know what? I thought he'd gone. I thought he'd gone with exit music. I mean, that to me was going to be the final Rebus book. He retired. He had to retire. He was 60. I found a way to bring him back, hopefully realistically, and to keep him around for a while, but he's got health issues. He can't stick around forever. I don't know. I mean, I've not really thought about the final. When I start a new book, I never know if he's going to be alive or dead at the end.
Really?
The story will tell me. The story will tell me if it's necessary for him to be alive or dead at the end of the book. So it could be the next one, could be the one after that. Who knows? Who knows? I used to say that I didn't think I could kill him off. I used to say I didn't think I had it in me to kill him off. I wonder now. I do wonder. I think it will depend on the story. I mean, I'd love a Reichenbach Falls moment with him and Cafferty. I would love a Reichenbach Falls moment. But at the same time, I can imagine them both in their dotage in the old folks' home, in their electric wheelchairs, battling around the place, trying to trade punches, you know. And we know this now. We know that literary characters, if they're successful, outlive the author.
Mm-hmm.
So just because Rebus dies doesn't mean to say that he can't come back to life in the future with somebody else writing the books, not me. Or go back in time like they've done with Morse, with Inspector Morse. You get the Endeavour written after Colin Dexter's untimely passing and make a successful character, remake a successful character. I mean, maybe young Rebus is waiting to be remade. Not by me. I don't think I've got it in me to do the young Rebus, because those would be historical novels. A lot of research. How much was a pint of beer in 1974? No idea.
Your archive will tell you.
No. No, 74, mate. No. I didn't get served in pubs till I was 15. I remember when I hit 18, my birthday when I was 18, my dad said, "I'll take you down to the Goth for a pint, the Gothenburg pub in Carden for a pint, his local." And we walked in there. Dad's proudest punch. His son's 18. Takes him in for his first drink. And the barman said to me, "Yeah, the usual." I'd been drinking in there for 2 years on nights when my dad wasn't there.
Brilliant.
The barman was furious when he found out that was me just turning 18.
On that note, I'm going to have to draw things to a close, I'm afraid. So I'd like to thank you for your questions.
Singles for sale. Singles
Oh,
for
yeah,
sale.
okay.
Singles.
And thank you.
We've
to
got
our-
hundreds to get rid of.
Shh. Thank you to Blackford, the sponsor for this evening's performance, and the New York Times for sponsoring this venue. And afterwards, there's a chance to sign the paper for you to buy a paperback to get signed by Ian through in the tent, and also a chance to buy a signed copy of the hit single by the Young Beat combo called "Best Picture" on pink vinyl.
Yeah, hot pink vinyl.
Hot pink vinyl, so irresistible. But thank you very much, and can I ask you to thank our guest tonight, Ian Rankin.
Kenny, thank you, man.
Great,
Thank you very much. My drummer.